People see me online at like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then they see me online at 9 a.m. Been up for a couple hours, but that's just the way I roll. Today, I'm going to have a guest on to talk about a little short update about like homemade firearms and stuff like that. And it's probably someone that you guys would never think that I would have on. But we don't agree with everything, but we do agree with this issue. And with this issue, we need to get as many people involved in it as possible to push back, especially what's going on in Pennsylvania with the certain gun groups who were pro gun, but I don't know if they are or not. But I will ask Art, my guest today. And his name is Rob Pincus. Rob, what's up, man?
How you doing, dude? Well, why. I don't know why. Has your audience thought I wouldn't be back on? I think I was on like 3 months ago. We just did the 2A rally together.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it just happens. People uh, don't forget about stuff. So,
Internet
I
politics.
yeah, I don't care really.
So, yeah, this gun making thing in Pennsylvania gives us a good reason to catch up. Anyway,
Yeah, I'm not sure how many people we're gonna have on because usually I do my streams late. It's 9 a.m. So
it's the
most people
you know
gonna do see the replay, I
they'll
guess.
see the replay. I mean, that's how it works, right? This gun, it's a busy season in gun politics and gun world. So people are gonna have
Mhm.
to start tuning into the 24-hour gun news cycle, I think.
Yeah, can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
What do you think of what's going on in Pennsylvania from the standpoint you run a or are involved in 2AO, which is the Second Amendment organization. What do you think about what FOAC is doing in Pennsylvania?
I'm confused by it. And I was confused by it. I actually, it's funny. I reached out to FOAC and a couple of other people in a couple of organizations and individuals in Pennsylvania when this news broke about the gun kits being banned, and I got responses from some people. I did not hear back from FOAC, and then of course I saw the news from you, and I saw their statement, and I'm
Yeah.
really confused by it because
Did you?
again, Kim Stolfer was one of our 2A rally guys, right? So here's another guy that obviously I don't always agree with, but none of us always agree, right?
Did
But I'm really confused as to the concept of what circumventing the normal process of buying a gun kit is. And I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something of that nature. Buying a non-gun object, right? Buying this non-gun object is something that every American should be able to do for cash. Buying this roll of 3D printer filament, right? If we're going to call this an 80% firearm, is this like a 1% firearm? Do I have to do a background check for this now? Can I not buy this for cash? Can I not
oh
give this to somebody? I don't know what FOAC's thinking. Honestly, it's boggling. I don't even know what Eagle Productions is thinking in terms of
Eagle I
Eagle
know
Arms
what
Productions.
they're thinking. Um
Well, tell me if you can explain it. You explain it because I'm really, really befuddled.
okay, this is what they're thinking. If this is from behind the scenes, these are from people I've been talking to. Um they're worried that they're gonna lose the venue totally. The venues, that the AG is gonna pressure the venues just to cancel the show, and I think that threat was made behind the scenes.
So here's what I would say. If that threat was made behind the scenes, they should say that. Hey, listen, gun community, we're under pressure from the Attorney General's office and we're under pressure from the venue. Contact the venue and let them know that you want this gun show to go on and that the community supports it. I mean, that's pretty simple. The other thing is banning the sale of gun kits, because I know the allegations against JSG. JSD is one of our supporters with the gunmakers match. I think we're going to talk about it a little bit. I know you're
Yeah.
involved in supporting that. Tusk is involved in supporting that. I'm one of the organizers. That event is going to happen right here in St. Augustine, Florida on June 19th. And if they are doing something wrong, which is the accusation, then deal with them. Don't tell everybody you can't buy gun kits and play into the gun control narrative that gun making is some nefarious criminal tied activity and not just a freedom hobby.
Well, here's the thing. They made a lot of accusations against JSD that JSD flat out denies. If you listen to my interview with Jordan Vinro, who's the owner of JSD, You can tell when people are trying to avoid questions or trying to play what I call verbal jujitsu.
Right.
He wasn't doing that.
No,
I
not at
I
all. No, I talked to Jordan
I
this
believe
morning,
him.
actually, knowing I was going to talk to you. I talked to him this morning as well. And it boggles my mind. First of all, there's legal activity, there's private business, there's federal regulation, state regulation, right? And then there's just preference. If the gun show promoter doesn't like the way JSD is doing business, then tell JSD they either can't do the thing you don't like or kick them out. But to blanket try to like not have the, I think honestly, like the integrity to go confront the person that you think is doing something wrong and say, I think you're doing this wrong, don't do it anymore at my show. It's private enterprise. They
Well,
can control what goes on, but to
uh,
punish everybody makes no
uh,
sense to me.
I think that was said behind the scenes to JSD, but what I don't like is two things: government pressure to ban it because it was the government, it was the AG, it was the DA that pressured Eagle Arms to stop it. And they said, "Hey, we're gonna go after your venues, and then you're gonna have no shows in Pennsylvania." I don't like that. I mean, that's not private business. That's not a private business making a decision for the private business. That is government interference, forcing a private business by twisting their arm to do that. And you gotta realize, I'm not making excuses for Eagle Arms, but they were in a tough situation. You
I
know,
agree with that. Yeah, I think you're right about the government pressure, because this is one of those arguments that boils down to there's mechanisms that we have to make this illegal in our country, right? Even Second Amendment. If somebody's pro gun control, there's ways to change the Constitution. If you want to change the Second Amendment, go through that process. But until you're willing to go through that process, don't give me cancel culture. Don't give me pressure. Don't give me sideways laws. Don't give me laws you can't enforce. Don't give me feel good laws. And certainly in this case, if it's just bullying, which is what this sounds like, if it's just coming down to bullying, then
100% was.
I think this is the problem. I think Eagle Arms should have sort of come to the gun community and said, hey, this is what's going on. Help us. Let's join together on this front and push back and let these venues know that our consumer dollars are more important than the opinion of the AG that isn't supported by the voters of Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, the second problem I have is with a gun rights organization basically tag teaming with the AG, the DA, and the anti-gun, a guy that's very anti-gun, with Almond Brown.
Yeah, and
Put,
that's so this is where I'm unclear, and this is where I really want to talk with some people, more people that I've talked to already in Pennsylvania, because there's a huge difference between sort of getting caught up in a fast developing story and trying to defend your friend that has run a bunch of gun shows and really empowered the Second Amendment community for a period of time in Pennsylvania in certain ways, and getting out in front of your skis is what we would say in Colorado, right? Where your weight's forward, you can't control your skis and you're about to crash, but it's right. You think you're still kind of able to save it. And that's what I'm wondering if FOAC is doing. If they're, but I'm really concerned, and maybe you have the exact quote. But what I'm really concerned about this idea that somehow buying a kit for cash at a gun show is
yeah,
quote unquote circumventing the appropriate procedures. Like if you buy it from Brownells or if you buy it from JSD online, we know there's a paper trail. Is that what FOAC is insinuating? That there should always be a paper trail?
I asked that exact question, and the answer was yes.
And that boggles my mind. I have to think that there's going to be some retraction. There's going to be some
No,
backpedaling. There's going to be, that's
I
not
don't
what
know.
I meant.
I don't know. I mean, I asked. I was like, "This is what you meant," and Kim Stouffer was like, "Yes." And I asked, "Are you sure this is what you meant?"
I,
And he was
I,
like, "Yes." So
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I asked multiple times. I was like, "That sounds like a registration," and his answer was, "It's not a registration. It's just a way to track guns."
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
like,
sorry, Kim. I'm
so
going to
that's
give
why.
Kim the benefit of the doubt that he was overwhelmed with the speed at which this story developed and caught off guard by the circumstances that he was in when he was talking to you. And I'm really hoping that within the next 24 hours, I see a statement from Kim and from FOAC that says, Yep, my bad. I got caught up in this. I was trying to protect a friend. That's ridiculous, and I'm
Well,
sorry.
well,
Because
I
that's
don't
the
think
only appropriate response at this point.
I don't think he was trying to protect a friend because he he was they had a run in with FOAC and with JSD, and they actually, and he's like, yeah, it happened. Uh, where they approached JSD's employees at a gun show and told them that they should be ashamed of themselves for selling 80% lowers because there are 80% frames or unfinished frames, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to call it. 80% is just like the vernacular terminology. It's not really 80%, but for selling those because they're putting blood in the streets. And when I asked him, "Did you say that?" and he's like, "I might have said that." He said, "That sounds like what I said, but I can't say for exactly what I said, but I stand by that, and I believe that people selling unfinished firearms at these shows have no soul for
Wow.
because they sell
That
it for cash and carry." I
yeah.
mean, that was right there, and I asked him multiple times, did you just say this? Because if you listen to me, I'm blown away. And
Right.
how
No,
that
I
it,
did. I listened to the interview, and I don't know.
well,
It is unfathomable to me that he's
well,
really taking this position. But all evidence right now is that he is. And if he doesn't apologize soon, I don't know how he's taken seriously in the gun rights community, or how FOAC is taken seriously, or anybody associated with FOAC. As
well,
much work as they have done
yeah,
in
they've done a lot of work,
Pennsylvania,
which is
this is
I
this is
I was friendly with him,
yeah.
and I reached out to him for a quote, and this is how the interview started. I reached out to him for a quote. He wrote me back, and he wanted to do a phone call. So I didn't have any questions prepared or anything, but I was like, if this is what you want to do, let's do it. Because I have a lot of questions. I mean, I had a lot of questions in my mind, but I wasn't going to ask a lot of questions until he wanted me to. So people ask me "Oh, did you prepare the questions?" I'm like, "No, like I wasn't
Right.
going to
No,
prepare."
it's very extemporaneous. I mean, and that's why I'm thinking maybe he just got caught up in it. But you're telling me about this history piece that, yeah, I guess, I mean, that's pretty damning.
Yeah.
You made an interesting point. And I make this point. I think it's really important. This idea of 80% lower and what we're even talking about, right? Because you're aware of the John Hopkins survey debacle a couple weeks ago.
The
That
flawed one.
Yeah, where they put out like this crazy biased, like even the verbiage was horrible. And I ended up getting put in touch with them through some of the work I'm doing in the medical community to try to help physicians and pediatricians that want to talk about guns and really want to try to stave off negative outcomes, how to avoid the politics and to use terminology that's not going to be politically damaging or offensive to the gun community, right? So I ended up in a conversation with the people that put that survey out, and it was it was similar to what I'm thinking was going on here, hoping with this situation. They really did not expect that to go kind of viral in the gun community, and the pushback that they got, they certainly weren't expecting. And their position was, well, look, we don't really know what we're talking about here. We were trying to get a feel for this space, and the only resources we have are essentially coming from the side that are coming at us saying, you got to help us do something about these ghost guns, right? It's like, okay, so pick up the phone and talk to somebody who knows what's going on, or get on the internet and do some research. I mean, it's a research facility. And I would say the same thing to Kim and to FOAC and anybody in Pennsylvania who's defending this position, or anybody in the gun community that isn't sure about this whole kind of sketchy 3D printed guns, gun kits. This idea of 80% is something that since I think the 70s, our community has bought into this idea that there is such a thing as an 80% designation. And that's just a made up term. There is no,
It's a marketing term.
yeah, there is no, I'm sure there was some ATF paper, piece of paper in the 70s or 80s that said something about 80% ish, but
Oh,
that's not a rule. So
I tracked it down. It was some company back in like 79 or something that actually marketed their guns. It's out of business now.
but they were permitted that by the ATF, right?
Yeah, but there wasn't ATF never said
It was
like
80%,
it
right?
was 80%.
There's no way to measure that. So
Yeah,
I
they
prefer
came
the
out with it.
term non-gun object, right, or gun building kit. And again, if you follow the logic, because there is no magic line of 80%, if we call this a certain percentage of finish on a gun, this also, right? Like this truck bed, I could this could be turned into an AK, right? Like the idea that the 3D printing filament or the non-gun object needs to be treated like a production gun is nonsensical, right? I mean, and I actually, it's funny, as I was getting these things together, I was like, well, let me grab just a regular production gun. I don't think I have a gun. Like I have a class going on in here. A couple guys are running the class right now while I'm talking to you.
Hey,
I don't even
Rob,
think I have a gun that's
Rob,
completely stock.
we're on YouTube, and if the algorithm detects you're holding
Oh
a gun,
yeah,
it's gonna kill it.
you're right. I forgot we were
So,
doing the YouTube thing. I'm used to doing IG. So can I pick up? Will it pick up a frame?
probably yeah.
All right. So there's
Sorry.
a potential frame here that has a serial numbery thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
This thing, because I have a manufacturing license, that frame has to have a serial number at a certain place. As a manufacturer, I'm told by the ATF, as you go through the manufacturing process between step 5 and 7, you better put a serial number on it or you're in violation. An individual gun maker outside of California and maybe one other state is not told when it becomes a firearm. And that's part of the problem we've got here for FOAC or anybody to take the position that a raw material or a kit needs to be controlled like a firearm before it's actually become what the ATF would legally consider a firearm is not only anti-gun freedom, but it's just nonsensical in a practical enforcement way. And I am stymied by why anybody thinks it's a good idea, particularly in Pennsylvania with the history of the Great American Outdoor Show and the Harrisburg Hunting Show. I mean, when I grew up in Jersey, that show was a big thing for hunters and firearms owners all around the Mid-Atlantic every year, and it got shut down in 2013 because Reed Exhibition said they didn't want to have any ARs on display after the Sandy Hook killings. And then the NRA ended up buying it. Reed Exhibitions lost the contract for SHOT Show. I mean, there's a very clear pattern of what happens to businesses in Pennsylvania that mess with gun show freedom, and yet Eagle Arms has jumped right in the middle of this.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's some stuff going on behind the scenes. But one of the things that was
Well,
really disturbing.
so talk to me because I'm
Well,
I'm
yeah, one of FOAC, Kim Stouffer, I should say, not really FOAC, pushed Eagle Arms behind the scenes for this ban. So they weren't reacting to the ban; they were actively campaigning and lobbying for the ban.
you're saying the behind the scenes is that FOAC isn't saying, oh, they did that. Let me comment. They actually were part of the here's how you solve this problem. Just ban kits.
Correct. They're viewing it as, for right or wrong. And I don't think it's all the FOAC. I think the majority of FOAC is agreeing with us. But I
Well,
know Kim
then
Stouffer.
it becomes a VCDL situation, right? Like if you thought it was a good idea to get on international television and suggest that children should be given guns inside of stuffed animals, and your leader guy, if you don't think that's a good idea, and your leader guy is on TV saying it's a good idea, get rid of your leader guy, right? But VCL didn't take that route. Now, will FOAC take that route? If FOAC as an organization doesn't agree with Kim Stolfer, we'll see if they think he should still be the leader guy at FOAC. Because
Yeah,
until he's not, then the position of FOAC has to be congruent with the position of leader. If I say something that is completely misaligned with Second Amendment organization, I'm not going to be the leader guy at Second Amendment organization anymore, or Second Amendment organization is de facto changing their position to support mine. You can't have it both ways.
yeah. Well, I guess. Okay, then I'll talk about like FOAC. FOAC under the president Kim Stouffer, they believe that uh, there should be self-regulation in the two-way community, and that uh, unfinished frames, whatever you want to call them, should not be sold for cash because they think that if we're going to lose more rights.
And
So
and
we
I
got to
and
compromise.
I think some of the areas where you and I have disagreed are closely related to this concept, right? Like if you look at the baseline fundamental concept of self-regulation, right, or policing our own, or the face that we put on gun ownership out in public, I agree with that principle 100%, right? I think it's kind of like DC Project says, education over legislation. If we educate gun owners and how to avoid negative outcomes, and we do our part about educating about responsible gun ownership, we're going to not need legislated responsibility, right? What I've always said is if we don't exercise responsibility, then we should expect other people to try to legislate their version of responsibility upon us. But that doesn't mean you don't jump from there to, so let's not make it legal for people to make guns individually without the government being involved. And if that's so, if FOAC is saying the government should be involved in any time somebody's making a gun, that's
Well,
anti-freedom.
well, if you ask them, they'll say no. We're not saying that.
Well,
We just think we. But
there should be a paper
but it's
trail.
like this. Well, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm just saying what they would say is no. We're not saying that. We just think that there should be a paper trail, which if the government needs that.
Yeah, that's
But
talking out of both sides of your mouth. That's not even. I'm not going to tolerate that inconsistency.
no,
What I would
but
say
I'm
is
just
this:
saying.
what we're doing is like, so, and I say we because you're involved in this also with the gun makers match. I see that as the way we protect from losing future rights. We exercise those rights loudly, proudly, and responsibly. That's how we keep people from coming in and trying to take away the right to make guns. By coming out without masks on, without hiding our identity, without suggesting or even worrying about the idea that the only reason to make your own gun is so you don't have to have a serial number on it. We're bringing a bunch of people who are into gun making, whether it's kit builds or 3D printed guns. They're going to come down here with, again, open face, their name on the sign-in sheet, and compete with some of the biggest names in the gun industry supporting the event. We've got Firearms Policy Coalition, Gun Owners of America is sponsoring. We've got Brownells is sponsoring, JSD is sponsoring, DefCAD and Ghost Gunner are sponsoring, and we've got a lot of smaller companies, Riptide Rails, 2A 3D Print, Print Your 3D, Print Your 2A. They're supplying parts as well. Brownells has been selling parts to people who make and modify guns for over 50 years. They're a multi-million-dollar company that is one of the most respected names in the industry. They're heavily, and even I think, at one point, even FOAC or Kim was saying, well, you can get it from Brownells. Well, if Brownells is doing it, why would Eagle Arms act like JSD shouldn't be doing it?
I think it's a cash thing, no paper trail.
It
Which
is amazing.
what do you call a list of guns that you can trace?
Registry.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think it's definitely a registry.
I mean, look at
Kim
Polymer 80.
disagrees with me on that.
Polymer 80. I think you're friends with those guys. I'm friends with those guys. They're also sponsors of the Gun Makers Match. I'm big fans of what they do, and this is a hobby for me, right? Like I'm not getting this. I printed this gun while driving across country in this truck. Oh yeah, I know. It's a frame though.
YouTube. I know, but the algorithm, if it picks it up, doesn't know that it's just a frame.
You just have to keep yelling at me. You like yelling at me, so it's fine. I printed that frame driving in this truck from Colorado to Florida, just because it was funny to do, right? I'm not going to carry that gun for defense. I'm not going to stage that gun for defense. These are part of my gun collection. These are fun ways for me to be part of, it's part of my expressing my right to keep and bear arms and the freedom, entrepreneurial freedom, development, design freedom, private property freedom, creative freedom, and gun freedom here in the US. The idea that that's going to be tied to gang activity, I get that sometimes guns end up in the hands of criminals. I had one guy, a holster company, My Tech holsters. Apparently they're friends with Eagle Arms and they're a vendor at these shows. They sent me a note and said, Rob, you don't understand what's going on. They were accused. Imagine if you were accused of having one of your students commit an act of terrorism or something. Well, these guys were accused of having one of the things bought at their show end up used in a crime. And that's why they're responding this way. And I said, look, man, been there, done that. And I sent him a link to the murder trial in Seattle about 5-7 years ago, where a guy's laptop was part of the evidence. And one of my streaming version of one of my training DVDs was on the laptop. And one of my drills taught for defense, sitting in a vehicle, if someone comes up on your vehicle and you need to defend yourself and you can't drive away, here's how you draw your gun and here's how you deal with that threat outside of the passenger window. He exactly recreated that scene and murdered somebody as a thrill kill. Apparently the guy was like a wannabe, serial killer. He got caught
Yeah,
the first time.
he was an incel guy.
So this guy used one of, I was accused, right, of providing the training that got somebody killed. Do I like that? No. But the fact that there are 6 million of those DVDs, more than that now, 7, 8 million of those DVDs have been sold over the course of 15 years. The fact that I've had who knows how many thousands of students that I've certified, who knows how many hundreds or a couple thousand instructors over the years, the good outweighs the bad. This is a risk we take in the gun community. The information I put out could be twisted. The guns that I sell through Avidity Arms could end up in a suicide, could end up in a tragic accident with a child, could end up in criminal activity. But I have to believe that there's a much greater good. And if Eagle Arms doesn't believe that the work they're doing to empower commerce inside of the Second Amendment community is doing more good than it is evil, then yeah, they should get out of this business and run craft shows or fishing exhibitions or whatever. But if they aren't willing to accept the negative outcomes and work against them without playing into bans and registry and demonizing and pejorative actions against sections of the gun community, they also shouldn't be in the gun community.
Yeah, you're right. One of the issues that I really have with this, and this is why I'm so passionate about it, and I think you can kind of hear it in my voice where I stand on this, is that two things. They're going to use Eagle Arms banning the sale of these unfinished frames as a way to pressure other gun shows around the country to do the same, and anti-gun groups like Ceasefire. I was on the Ceasefire boards and some other private Facebook group for these it's like these anti-gun groups. I know they probably want to know which user I am on there, but I'm not going to say. But we're talking about how can we use this to say, hey, look, here is a Second Amendment organization that admits that there's a problem with these, that says these should be banned.
Sure, I get it, and it's a slippery slope kind of thing. If I say like Walk to Talk America, we get a lot of static at Walk to Talk America for wanting to get upstream of mental health issues that end up causing or being involved in negative outcomes with firearms. And we'll say something like, hey, if you're going through hard times, think about having your guns, at a friend's house, or maybe take them to the gun shop and leave them there for an extended cleaning or whatever. And separate. There's a time when you maybe think about separating yourself from the firearm.
Which is perfectly legitimate. I support Walk the Talk America, but I'm sure you know that.
Yeah, I do, and I appreciate that. And Hold My Guns and NSSF. There's a lot of us that talk about this gun responsibility piece, and we'll get in the comments will be filled with, oh, so you support red flag laws, you're for confiscation, you're making it sound like it's the gun's fault. No, but when you target and you say, you know what, you shouldn't be able to own this type of thing, or you shouldn't be able to openly sell or exchange this type of thing, that to me is a very, very different thing. It's very easy. So I get that accusation, right? The gun control groups are going to quote Rob Pincus as a board member of WTTA, or as a firearms instructor, or as the Personal Defense Network guy, or as 2AO's EVP. They're going to find me, quote me, and say, of course, it's part of responsible firearms ownership to avoid unauthorized access to your guns. And that they're going to try to use that to say, I support mandatory gun storage laws. That's a leap, right? I'm not, and that leap, I get accused of participating in that leap all the time. Not worried about it. What I'm worried about is somebody who explicitly says, of course it's okay if we have universal background checks. It's not that big a deal. Well, of course it's okay if they have laws around storage, because most gun owners store their guns responsibly, and all gun owners should. And that's the line that I feel as Second Amendment advocates we can't cross. And that's the line I'm afraid that Kim, FOAC are crossing on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I just wish that they would. I mean, I don't know how they're going to recover unless they walk it back.
I don't know. I have
Honestly.
friends that are involved in FOAC in Pennsylvania have told me,
Yeah.
don't worry, they're not in cahoots with the AG. And to me, it's like, the nuclear version, right? It's like, I'm not suggesting there was some kind of, they're getting paid off by the AG to pressure the
Yeah,
gun show promoter. What
I
I'm
don't think
suggesting
anyone's
is,
doing it.
no, not at all. So it's, let's not go to, I'm not accusing him of having a sexual affair with the AG. I'm accusing him of doing something inside the gun community that is supportive of a gun control narrative, that somehow selling non-gun objects or making your own guns at home is a criminal or nefarious or sketchy activity, which it's not.
No, it's I mean, it's been done since the founding of the country.
Well,
Before the
before
founding
that,
of the
people, I
country.
mean, the first tools people made were like sharp sticks, right? Like, or like fashioned clubs out of wood or rock or bone. Like
It's not something new.
humans making tools, and those tools being weapons, and those tools, when you talk about spears and atlatls and slings going up through bows and then finding firearms, I mean, projectile tools are part of the human history for all kinds of reasons: recreation, hunting, survival, defense, offense. We get it. To act like this is going to magically stop, I just because there's technology like 3D printers, or there's a multi-million-dollar professional company like Polymer 80 that comes in and makes it more professional and more above board. This is what boggles my mind, right? Like, we have NASGW, National Association of Sporting Goods Wholesalers. They have been Polymer 80 has been part of their organization for years. Major players at the events, supporting NASGW, getting involved with NASGW. And this is one of the most established conservative organizations in the gun industry. And they embrace what Polymer 80 is doing. And all of the major players, Midway, Brownells, Primary Arms Online, JS, all these distributors are selling these things and have been selling the parts forever. And yet FOAC is going to act like this is something sketchy about this.
Let me ask you something else. One of the comments that Kim made is that these guns shouldn't be sold in certain neighborhoods. And when I asked them, I was like, are you talking about minority neighborhoods? Because it seemed to me, it seemed like he was beating around the bush,
Right.
About that. And originally he said yes.
Right.
Then when I said wow, because I was so taken back about that, I was like, minority neighborhoods? He changed it to, I mean, high crime neighborhoods.
Which I'm sure in Kim's mind is the same exact thing.
Yeah, well, I wanted to see what you thought of that exchange.
I believe that in his mind that's the same thing. And once again, I believe he got in over his head. He got out in front of his skis. He was way off the mark of where he should be as a gun rights advocate in that interview. And you can only, again, I think there's a very short window to come out and apologize to the gun community and say you got caught up in it and you were sorry and you've thought about it more and you've talked to some people and you were wrong. The new Kim moving forward is a staunch advocate for access to firearms by minorities, access to firearms for people in high crime areas, access to the equipment, parts, and resources to make your own guns if you want to do it, whether you want to do it for protection or you want to do it for a hobby or you want to do it for competition. I think there needs to be some major retraction. And, unfortunately, not a lot of humans are built to do that. So like I said, I don't know where this goes. Personally, this idea that there is an education. I've been doing a series of conversations on through 2AO, but a lot of it's on my YouTube channel about outreach and talking to people outside of the gun community or outside of the traditional gun community about gun rights and about the gun community and what that is, right? And one of the things that comes up with a lot of the people I talk about who do work in urban environments is this idea that there's a mentality in some parts of the country, in some communities, where they don't even necessarily know or feel comfortable with the idea of going into a gun shop and purchasing a gun legally. They don't know if there's going to be a social stigma. They don't know if they're going to be welcome. They've maybe been told, because of all the fear mongering that happens in largely Democratic controlled urban environments around gun ownership, that they feel like they want a gun for protection, but they don't want to be sort of publicly gun owners, and they don't feel comfortable going to the gun shop. So yeah, they might participate in buying a gun for cash, whether they know it's legal or it's not legal. Maybe it is legal in their state. They're fine with it. Should they be part of the gun community? Absolutely. Should they be responsible gun owners? Absolutely. If someone wants to buy a Polymer 80 kit and they want to use that as their defensive gun, and they feel like they're safer and they're smarter and they're better for having bought a gun that they paid cash for than one they bought at the gun shop, that doesn't bother me. I can't assume that person is doing it because they're a criminal. I would just tell them, hey, a production gun, a factory traditionally production produced gun is probably going to be more reliable and a better choice for personal defense or home defense than a kit gun. And that would be as a personal defense educator, not as a gun rights advocate.
Here's another question I have for you about the whole entire situation. And it's kind of related to FOAC, and FOAC has fought against Second Amendment sanctuaries. What? Because they, I don't know. I guess
Yeah, I
don't
don't
know
know
why.
what their logic is on that. I will tell
But
you that personally, for me, I am skeptical of the value of a Second Amendment sanctuary. I am unaware of any example, and please, hit me with one if you got one, or in the comments if you know of one, send me the links. Not I heard, not the sheriff said, but I want to know where there was a what would have been a violation of law under a state law or a federal law that law enforcement came into contact with inside of a Second Amendment sanctuary and said, well, sorry, we're a Second Amendment sanctuary. We're not going to prosecute. We're not going to charge. We're not going to confiscate. We're not going to enforce that law. I'm unaware of that. We just had a review in Colorado of the first year of the red flag law in Colorado, the ERPOs. It was used like 120 times, and there were like 4 or 5 cases of fraud, one of which is still being prosecuted, or abuse. There was, I think there were 60 times when the judge granted the ERPO and there were only maybe 20 or 30 times, somewhere in that range of 50%, where the guns were actually taken into custody by the police department, the law enforcement agency, as opposed to the guns were just given to a family member, trusted friend, or a gun shop. So when you look at it, like there was, in Colorado, big state, lots of guns, 120 attempts, 4 or 5 abuses, 60 grants, and only 20 or 30 actual guns confiscated. Colorado's law is actually, if you're going to have a red flag law in your state, Colorado's law is pretty good. There's court appointed attorneys. There's a timeline for the guns coming back. There's all that kind of stuff. But the
yeah,
point that was interesting to
there's
me
other
was,
states that
right, not,
red
yeah,
flag
there's other
laws against
states that are,
bad,
that are
like
way worse. Right?
Maryland. Maryland is just like thousands.
Maryland, New Jersey, New
Yeah,
York. There's
yeah.
horrible states out there.
Their
I
red
get it.
flag laws are just insanely
They're
bad.
all red flag laws are bad and wrong.
All bad, but yeah, I want to make
But
that sure that clear. But there are
right,
some that
some are
are
worse.
incredibly bad. That's like
So
insane.
but the point being, some of the counties, there was a big movement in Colorado for Second Amendment sanctuary counties a couple years ago. So now we have the test. Well, wait a minute. There were ERPOs granted and enforced in counties that said they were a Second Amendment sanctuary. So I just asked the question, right? Well, has anybody asked those sheriffs? Has anybody talked to those agencies? Has anybody talked to the county commissioners and asked, how are these things being enforced if you're a Second Amendment sanctuary? And I get a lot of avoiding the question and mealy mouth kind of, well, it might have been a city agency, not a county, but the county courts are the ones that are issuing these. And it's usually the county sheriff that serves those kinds of papers. It's not the local jurisdiction. So there's a lot of questions around that for a few counties in Colorado. I love the idea, right? But if it doesn't mean anything, I look at Virginia as a perfect example. So, hundreds of thousands of people got motivated in Virginia, and tens of thousands of people, I'm sure, actively participated in this movement for Second Amendment
Well,
sanctuaries, cities and counties. But if the county said, yeah, we're a Second Amendment sanctuary, you win, and then everybody went home and it doesn't really mean anything, now I'm concerned that we were sort of fed a political line, because Second Amendment sanctuary doesn't mean anything unless there's a change in enforcement. And I'm unaware of evidence of the change in enforcement. That's my concern.
well, here's the thing with that. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. The Second Amendment sanctuary movement is why we don't have an assault weapons ban in Virginia.
I agree with
Because
that. The movement, for sure.
Chap Peterson actually came out and said that because all these counties are going Second Amendment sanctuary, he would not vote for it because he's seen the outpouring of Second Amendment sanctuary, people against gun laws, so he's not going to vote for an assault weapons ban.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the social movement and the political movement is important. The statement is important. But I think we need to be very, very careful and really be watching these sheriffs and county commissioners and city councils and police chiefs who said, yep, we're a Second Amendment sanctuary. If 6 months later we're still seeing news reports of guns being confiscated. Now I'm not talking about a murder weapon. I'm talking about somebody gets pulled over and they have a gun in the car and they don't have a permit and the gun was confiscated and there's charges pressed. Well, that's not supposed to happen in a Second Amendment sanctuary because there's supposed to be no infringement of the right to keep and bear arms. So again, I'm unaware of the examples because here's the thing: if you're the sheriff and you go out and campaign and make a big deal about the idea that you're not going to enforce gun laws, and then your deputies are enforcing gun laws, there's a problem. And why wouldn't you want to follow up and say, hey, gun people, guess what? We had a guy that was carrying concealed in our county without a permit last week. Somebody called us and said, I think he's carrying a gun. We went out there, talked to him, responsible guy, no criminal record. We let it go. We don't care that he was carrying without a permit because we're a Second Amendment sanctuary, shall not be infringed, yay, America. I don't see that happening. And I think I would be shocked if I saw it happen, honestly. So I want to be careful that we're not just being placated by the politics and the effect that it has on the today's elected officials. Because what happens next time? Some other guy gets elected, and well, the county's already a Second Amendment sanctuary, so there isn't going to be a big movement. And that next elected official at the state level might vote because there isn't 10,000 people in the streets. And that's what I'm worried about is what really happens with the Second Amendment sanctuary. Look at it this way. Trump gave us a federal Second Amendment sanctuary in 2016, right? Or in 2017 even, right? So he gets elected in 2016 on the premise that the federal assault on our gun rights will be over. 2017 comes, we get no Hearing Protection Act, we get no national reciprocity, we lose bump stocks, we get mealy mouth stuff on background checks and red flag laws, and we get zero. But everybody was super excited because he said it was going to be a federal Second Amendment sanctuary. That didn't happen. So that's the kind of stuff I'm worried about.
I think there's one sheriff. Actually, I think there might be two, but there's one sheriff. I'm trying to remember where he's from, but I remember his name, but I don't remember where he was from. I'll look it up for you. Not Jenkins. Oh my God. Now I blanked out on his name. Um,
We'll put it in the show notes.
yeah. Damn it. Oh man. There was Smith. I think his name was Justin Smith. I don't know, but there is one case I have to find. I think it's Justin Smith.
The
Who?
helicopters are coming for me now because I showed a gun on YouTube.
Yeah, probably. I think there was a sheriff. Don't quote me on this, but Justin Smith who refused to enforce one. I can't remember where he's from.
But what did this supposedly Justin Smith guy do?
Oh, I mean, it's from back in January, and I just never wrote about it, so I just have that name in my head. I mean, I could be totally wrong. I'm gonna have to research it.
But what do you think he did?
From what I remember, uh, there was they ordered him to enforce a red flag law, and he refused.
Oh, okay. I'd love to look at that. So yeah, if that's the case, that's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. I want to see those examples because that's what's going to make other sheriffs and other police
Yeah,
departments start falling in line with that idea.
but I don't even think it was a case of a Second Amendment sanctuary.
Oh, really?
I think it was just a sheriff saying no.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
I think it's Justin Smith. I'll have to find it.
all right. Well, we'll
It
look at that.
wasn't like a huge story. It was like the local story, and I never followed up to see what happened.
I'll look into it. Like I said, and please, if somebody's watching this, send me I'm pretty easy to find, on Instagram or YouTube or email or Second Amendment organization. Send us the citations because I think there's a lot of people who are really proud of the Second Amendment sanctuary movement in a lot of states, and
I think they should be though,
as they should be, if it means something more than just a political statement, and maybe even be proud about the political statement. But then we also have to worry about the future
okay.
effect of it.
All right, I don't know if you can see the thing, but yeah,
Yep.
Sheriff Justin Smith refusing to serve red flag law petition. There you go.
Good. Where was he? All right,
You're
I'll look it
asking
up.
about a
The
story
point being, and if
that
he
I
if he
never
was
wrote about.
if
I
he
got
was
like
elected, or if that's a Second Amendment sanctuary, cool. That's the first example I've got of the Second Amendment
I
sanctuary
mean, I don't
playing
think
out.
it was a Second Amendment sanctuary. I think it was a sheriff.
Just a free. We have some of those in Colorado too. Like they have the Freedom Coalition or something like that.
I'm thinking it was in Colorado.
We have that. There's a group of
Yeah,
sheriffs.
Colorado.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a group of
he was
sheriffs
in
in
Colorado.
Colorado who aren't Second Amendment sanctuaries because the commissioners won't vote that way. But they have said personally, as like Freedom Coalition
Yep.
sheriffs, they're not going to enforce gun laws.
Yep, I got it right here. Larimer Sheriff, Larimer
Yep.
County.
Good. All right. So that's great. I don't know. Because I don't think they're a Second Amendment sanctuary.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. So that's a really good example of sort of the other side of it, that elected officials, and in Colorado, obviously, sheriffs are the highest law enforcement official in the county that's elected, or that the highest period, and they are elected. And this guy is serving the will of the people in Larimer County. So that's great. I mean, I love that. And he didn't have to have a Second Amendment sanctuary to do it.
They are.
Oh, they are.
Yes.
Even better. All right. So that's great. That's the first example I've heard. And again, I don't know when it was. Maybe that'll pop up next. You said January?
It was in January, yeah.
So that's after the first year. And maybe that's after people in Colorado started asking that question, right? Like, wait a minute, why are there red flag law petitions being served, or why are these being granted and being served in what we thought were Second Amendment sanctuary counties? Maybe he got some pushback and then came out and said, oh, well, we're not serving them anymore. You guys are right. That's great.
No,
I love that.
I don't think he was. They went Second Amendment sanctuary in 2019. It appears, and he said, "I'm not going to enforce any of these gun laws." And so far, he has refused to enforce them.
Good. That's great.
So he says because his reasoning is we're Second Amendment sanctuary, so we're gonna act like one.
Probably share that story out, because it's interesting, because like even like Rocky Mountain gun owners and Rally for Your Rights in Colorado, these conversations were all going on, but they were going on in January. So like I said, he may have made that statement after, or that one incident may have happened after we were all talking about the first year report. But at any rate, let's get back to the gun makers match, because I got to get back to class.
Okay.
I don't know if you're going to be able to make it, but you are backing a team, right?
The Tusk team, Black Swan Media, Black Swan Black Swan Tactical, are backing them.
Perfect. So for people that don't know, you can go to gunmakersmatch.com. This was initiated about 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, and the idea was, let's put the happy face, the proud, responsible American gun owner, gun maker face on this, because I get it. When you Google, 3D printed guns, you see some, you see a bunch of kids in balaclavas shooting guns that, might last, might break.
Hey, Rob, I hate to do this, but this is a very, very important call.
We got to go anyway. Gunmakersmatch.com.
All right, bye. Hey, Bob. Not bad. They have a NetBrain call today? Wasn't that the same demo? I know you were saying that there was a demo scheduled. If not, I can jump on really quick. Do you have the link? Hold on, let me look. Okay, I think that there was another NetBrain call that was. No, I mean, I remember there was one originally, but I don't see my calendar now. But there was one that was a I know they were gonna have one that was basically it was the same demo. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, well, it looks like it was removed from my calendar. So it was there. Yeah. Uh-huh. The feedback from the NetBrain? Or which All right, let me take a look at that. I was working on something. I was working checking out net burning on ASW right now. I mean AWS, but let me